All right, so good afternoon and welcome, and thank you for joining us for this Aviation Career Speaker Series with United Airlines and their Aviate team. I know we have our Aviation 100 class and our CFI class with us, and hopefully other students are joining as well. But we have an exciting afternoon. We're excited to host United in this webinar format. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce our liaison with United, Ms. Sue McGrath. Sue.
Thanks, Beth. Look so forward to talking with all of you. Welcome. So instead of meeting with your professors today, you have an opportunity to hear a lot about what's happening within the industry, United, and some of the benefits that you as a flight student and instructor at UND have the opportunity to join via our Aviate Career Path program. So we're excited to share some information with you. We have some super exciting news that was just announced within the last hour. So we appreciate your time today, and we want you to know that this is a conversation to inform your path. Our goal is to help provide you with the information that you need to help inform you and energize you as you decide what your career path is going to be. So I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Sue McGrath, as Beth said. I'm one of the Aviate pilot recruiters working closely with UND. You've probably seen some of our presentations, or hopefully you have, but we've updated a lot of the information because a lot is changing very quickly, and we appreciate you being here today. I'd like to introduce my team, including many of our UND alum. JD, would you start?
You got it. Thanks for that, Sue. My name is JD Gommel. I was a 2004 graduate from UND. Been at United since 2014, so just about 7 years now. Started my career shortly after UND. I flight instructed for a bit and ended up at Atlantic Southeast Airlines, which turned into ExpressJet eventually. So I did about 9 years total in the regional world before I came over to United Airlines. Love it here. Best decision I ever made, and looking forward to working with some of y'all.
Michael.
Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Morgan. I am a class of 2010 University of North Dakota alum, and I've just hit my 5th year of service at United Airlines, which was also the best decision that I've ever made. So I'm excited to be here today to talk to you a little bit. I'm currently based in Chicago on the 737.
Thanks, Michael. And Bill.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Patterson. I'm a 757, 767 first officer in Chicago. I'm probably the old man on campus here. I graduated UND in 2000 and did a similar footprint to JD in terms of a little bit longer ride to the regionals, but have been at United since 2013.
Thanks, Bill. And we also have 2 significant team members from our Alpha group that are also United pilots. Mitch.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mitch Morgotio. I also go by Mitch Margarita, whichever you like. And I volunteer on the Alpha National Education Committee. So we spend lots of time engaging with that next generation of pilots at our ACE clubs all throughout the country. As you guys might know, they're on your UND campus.
Thanks, Mitch. And last but not least, Mike, would you make an introduction?
Sure. My name is Mike Hamilton. I am a 777 instructor. Been with United since 1997. So with all due respect to Bill, I am the dinosaur. So I am not a UND grad, but I am a proud student, proud parent of a UND aviator who's currently attending University of North Dakota. So I've been an instructor in the 777 for quite some time. I'm getting ready to go execute my 757 bid here in Denver. So as a captain.
Thank you, Mike. So as you can see, we have a whole host of individuals here that are committed to making sure that you leave this presentation with something that will help inform your path. So let's get started then and talk about some of what's been happening in the industry. And you may have heard, I know Beth did a great job of sharing some information about a State of Aviate presentation that our United leadership team put together back in late January of this year, just to share an update as to what's happening with not only with the industry, but also with United. And at that time, Brett Hart, who is the United president, announced that United will be hiring 10,000 pilots in the next 10 years. And to some, that was like astonishing news because it's news that maybe we were sharing about a year ago, and everyone's like, well, how can that be? We're still in COVID. And we feel very, very confident that that's a number that is a minimum number based on some of the growth plans we have, as well as the how we've set ourselves up for recovery. So we're going to share more detail about that. At the same time, Captain Brunges, our Managing Director of Aviate and Pilot Strategy, announced that we would be starting interviews in mid to late February, which was very exciting for our Aviate program. And as of today, I just confirmed that we have interviewed 123 soon-to-be aviators at United Airlines since starting up those interviews. We're doing those interviews on somewhat of a limited basis for the protection and safety, not only of our candidates, but of our staff, and recognizing, that we are slowly building back toward full capacity. And we're excited to announce that we will be doing some additional interviews, even in the next couple of weeks, with some university participants, some of which may be on this call. So thank you. Lastly, we also, during the State of Aviate, had representation from Captain Todd Insler, who's our ALPA MEC chairman and president, and he announced ALPA's continuing commitment to the success of our United pilot hiring program. And with that, we have some exciting news that was just shared with our own pilot team within the last hour regarding what's happening at United. Mike, would you like to share some input from ALPA?
Yeah, so I know this has been a scary time to be entering the industry, and quite frankly, it's been a scary time to be in the industry. There are a number of pilots that are going to be presented to you that were probably as concerned as you were. But, and I know over the last year, a lot of people, your professors, some of the guest speakers, some of the industry professionals that spoke to you have told you, just hang in there, we'll get better. And what I'm very excited to tell you is things are getting better. United has announced today that we will begin new hire classes in May, and we anticipate, due to pilot demand, to increase our hiring, and it should continue for the foreseeable future. So this is great news. Should be very exciting news, especially for our TFIs, but also for every pilot there at University of North Dakota. So congratulations for sticking it out, and I'll turn it back to Sue so we can continue the presentation.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. And such great news. And the fact that United is able to begin hiring so quickly ahead of our competitors was made possible in part by our continued partnership with ALPA and their contributions to an important agreement that Mitch is going to reference a little bit later. So thank you, Mike, for that. I'm going to turn it over to, is it Mike?
Other Mike. Yep, that's me.
Okay, thanks.
Well, thank you, Sue and Mike, for that. That's great news, and we're excited to get the hiring process started again. So again, my name is Michael Morgan, and I want to start off with just talking to you about one of the things that I think is most beneficial for being a pilot at United Airlines, and that's the flexibility that it offers each and every individual, both in your personal life and in your professional life. If we talk just flexibility, just looking at the fleet and the network that we have at United, we have one of the most extensive wide body fleets in the world. And we have the most wide body aircraft of any North American air carrier. When we say wide body, we're talking about big, heavy jets. So the 767-300 and 400, the 777-200 and 300, and also the 787-8, 9, and 10. Between all those aircraft, we were able to fly all over the world, and it's just absolutely amazing and exciting to be at a company where you have so much choice. We also utilize our narrow body fleet of 737s and the A320 family to move our customers throughout our domestic and international networks. On top of just our fleet and our network, you can see the bases that we offer. We offer 9 crew bases in the United States, actually 8 in the continental United States and 1 in Guam, which gives you the flexibility to be based in some of the greatest cities that this country has to offer. And if that's not quite your flavor, or you'd like to live in a smaller town, that's an option too. If you'd like to live in the Northwest or in the Southeast where we don't have a hub, you can commute. And the flexibility that United offers allows most of our pilots to have just a one-leg commute to work, which really increases our quality of life. Guam is actually one of the reasons that I came to United, to have the opportunity to go and be based in Guam for a couple of years. I ended up not taking it when I got here, but it was something that really set United apart for me when I was looking at major airlines. Also, another note on commuting. I personally know 2 or 3 pilots, one that commutes from Costa Rica, another that commutes from Germany, and another that commutes from Japan. So when I say you can live anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world, I really mean it. The next bullet point on there, training and innovation. We at United are really proud of our consolidated training center in Denver, Colorado. And it's the largest single flight training center in the United States with more than 30 full flight simulators. Guys, this is a really impressive facility. And every time I walk in there as a United pilot, I'm proud to be part of this team. Culture and connection. This is something that we've really put renewed emphasis on, especially in the last few years. And a quote off of the United Airlines website that says that we are determined to be a global leader in diversity, inclusion, and equity, and will continue to work to ensure our people, policies, and processes reflect the customers and communities that we serve. And that really is a top-down mentality here at United Airlines. And from a pilot perspective, what that means is that we partner with organizations such as NGPA, Women in Aviation, OVAP, and others to make sure that we eliminate barriers to entry for all pilots and make sure that everybody has an opportunity to be a United Airlines pilot despite their background. And finally, the industry leadership. And United really has been a leader, especially through this pandemic. Usually during times of economic downturn, most companies lean on becoming more efficient. And United has somehow become more efficient and improved our customer experience at the same time. A few things that really stand out to me are the implementation of our United Clean Plus program, which enhances aircraft cleanliness standards and schedules, permanent removal of ticket change fees for standard economy and premium domestic flights, and also our customer service on demand, which allows our customers at the airport to have an interaction with their customer service agent via their phone, which is just amazing. And all of these things came out of this global pandemic. We would have never had these if we'd not been thrown into this unprecedented last year. But most importantly to you as a pilot, what this means is that we are now in a position to hire more than 10,000 pilots in the next 10 years. The next slide talks just a little bit about pilot volatility. And it's no secret that this has been the worst economic event to impact aviation. Prior to this, 9/11 was kind of the litmus test. We always looked at 9/11 as the worst case scenario. And so we plan to be better than that. We plan to survive another 9/11. And we could have never expected that this pandemic would have hit as hard as it has. But what this graph really shows is that our industry is cyclical and the airlines are used to the ups and downs of the aviation industry. And every time we've used it to pivot and be in a better position than when we started. Getting hired at United, I really want to point out this bottom line on this slide that says getting hired at the beginning of a wave is extremely beneficial. And we are at the beginning of that hiring wave, despite the pandemic. What this means to you is better seniority. If you get hired on at the beginning of a hiring wave, better seniority is going to make the quality of your life even greater at United. And what does this mean as far as quality of life to you goes? Well, it means you get choice over your schedule. Do you like working on weekends and holidays? I don't either. The more seniority you have, the more choice you have to stay home on the weekends and stay home on those holidays. Do you like having choice over the domicile that you're in? Seniority gives you that option. Would you like to fly the 777? I would, and seniority gives you that option. So pretty much seniority affects every part of your life, both at work and at home. And you are in a great position to have phenomenal seniority if you come to United Airlines. The last little bit that I'll leave you with is that seniority basically gives you the ability to choose your adventure while you're here. So come on over, we'd love to have you. And I'll pass the next slide off to JD.
Thanks for that, Mike. I just want to give you guys a little bit of clarity here on what Mike's talking about. I just have 2 slides for you, but these are very important slides for anybody who's considering a career at United Airlines, because this is pure data for you. If you're a data-driven person, most of us as pilots are. We like to see trends, and these are great trends. So we have 2 graphs here, one on the left-hand side and one on the right-hand side. The left side is basically what we were looking at pre-pandemic. So 2019 and the one on the right-hand side is 2020 and beyond. And we have three of us. We're comparing ourselves to both Delta and American Airlines. Now, something to consider on this is American is a much larger airline. It's technically the world's largest airline, so they have more pilots than we do. So, of course, their numbers in aggregate are going to be much larger than ours. Delta is also a larger airline than we are. We're going to play some catch up here, but just to kind of give you an idea of what we're dealing with. So gray is American, red's Delta, blue is us. On the left-hand side, you can see that our retirements early on here for the next couple of years are hovering about the 400 to 500 pilots per year mark. It's a good number of pilots per year. I mean, that's some good attrition. And we're taking into account age 65, which is mandatory retirement age. So what we did was we threw some boxes on there, and you'll notice that's for 2025. And we're kind of trying to give you a benchmark here of when you can start to see yourself entering the workforce here at United Airlines. And I'll let that catch back up.
I was just going to say, I don't know how that popped up. Hold on.
Okay.
Sorry.
But anyway, just to cue you up for when that gets back on here. What we really want to show you is that in 2025, like Mike was just mentioning, when that wave is starting to happen, as the other airlines, as American and Delta are starting to come down the backside of their wave that they've been having for the last 5, 6, 7 years, we're still going to be on an upward trajectory. And that's fantastic news for you. When I was sitting in your shoes in college or when I was at a regional airline, for me, before I was fully ready to go to a major or legacy carrier, kind of a delay was good, because for me, that's fewer people that are getting in front of me in line on that seniority list. So as you can see on the left-hand side, the peaks for American and Delta kind of happen here in the mid 2020s, and they drop off pretty precipitously. For us, it continues to go up, and ours goes up and doesn't really drop off until 2032. Now, what I want you to look at now is the reality of our current state on the right-hand side. And what these graphs don't do is they don't show you 2020. 2020, we had several programs that were put into place. They were voluntary, and they allowed our most senior pilots to take early leaves retirements. And we had a total of 818 pilots take some sort of voluntary leave. So we had a huge tranche of pilots exit the property, 818 total. And fun fact, today we actually had 66 as of today take retirement. We had to hold on to some 787 pilots because that fleet was so busy. So these are our most senior, most experienced pilots that took some sort of early out to allow those of us lower on the seniority list to keep our jobs. That was all part of this LOA that you'll hear about in a bit. But the whole point of this is I want you to focus on that right-hand slide now and see that as Delta and American either plateau or decrease, United's still going to see a pretty good increase in retirement. So looks like we peak out there in about 2028, 2029 at just over 700 pilots per year, which is very noticeable to you on a seniority list. Now, on our next slide, we're going to go to here. It's going to show that it's pretty much more straightforward here. So here's our age 65 retirements. Like I was saying, we peak in 2028. And you don't really see those numbers start to drop off until 2032, but they're still pretty big numbers. So over the next 10 years, we're going to retire 5,000 pilots. There are 50% of the pilots are going to retire in the next 12 years, which is huge. Think about that. If you get hired within the next 4 years, or if you come into Aviate and you end up on the seniority list, that is massive movement. And that means, like Mike was mentioning before, choice of where you want to be based, what kind of airplane, whether you want to be a captain or stay as a senior first officer. It's kind of pick your flavor. So these are all good numbers for you as far as being a junior or a more junior pilot at United Airlines. You can see we go up to 2044 there. That's the next 22 years. We're going to retire 80% of our pilots at United Airlines. What does 80% mean to you? That means wide body captain, because all these guys that are older than you, myself and everybody on this panel included, are going to start retiring. And that's just forward movement for you. So this is fantastic news for you guys and for the industry as a whole. This is, attrition is good, and it gives you opportunity for the future. So that's pretty much all I have. I'm going to wrap my part up and pass it on to Mitch.
Hey, thanks a lot, JD. So as you all have seen on those previous slides, they're purely born out of the retirements alone. We have some unmatched opportunities ahead here at United, specifically for this next generation of pilots, which is you guys. But first, we'd like to take a step back and go over some of our recovery strategy and plan out our flight path as we move forward here in the recovery. So we're really excited to announce this last month in March that our core cash burn actually turned positive, which is a huge step forward. Now, the return to true profitability is still going to be a long road ahead, but thankfully, Goldman Sachs, their latest economic outlook back in December, they expects air traffic to resume to 2019 levels by the end of 2023. And actually, a lot of experts even believe it may be much sooner than that based on some strong booking trends that we're seeing already. Now, as our CEO, Scott Kirby, has put it very clearly, United's goal is to emerge from the crisis as the best airline in the history of aviation. Now, there's three ways that we're really doing that, or three areas we'd like to highlight for you. They truly distinguish us from our competition. The first one is the fleet strategy. So unlike most of our competitors, United has retired 0 aircraft permanently due to COVID-19. And in case you missed the other news back in early March, our order book has in fact expanded since the pandemic began. And we recently just placed an order for 25 additional Boeing 737 MAXs. In addition, we've accelerated our delivery schedule for new aircraft and continued to take scheduled deliveries of used Airbus A319 and A320s and used Boeing 737-700s. So the driving point there is it's pretty easy to remove capacity, like we've seen over the last year from several of our competitors, but it's really hard to have all those pieces of the puzzle in place to recapture demand, and especially on a global scale with a global route network like United has. So this strategy provides us with the best ability to not only recover, but also expand our market share as demand returns. Now, as the vaccines have been deployed, we haven't wasted any time. We've been updating our premium product with more Polaris and some cabin refurbishments while the aircraft are temporarily out of service. And this includes expanding our fleet of high J Boeing 767s, which have a whopping 50% more Polaris seats on them for those ultra premium markets, which are becoming really popular. And once demand returns, this means that United will be not just a bigger airline, but a better one as well, with a better product. Next, we're really proud of our innovative collaboration with labor. And I could speak very personally to this one, as I'm sure several others on the call can. This collaboration has been historic, and it saved my job over the last year. So I'm truly thankful for the road we've just trod over the last 12 months. As you might know, back in October, we signed the historic pandemic recovery letter of agreement between ALPA and United, and it reduced our work hours, but it maintained pay rates, and it actually negotiated long-run pay increases. So it was not a concessionary agreement at all. The agreement also reversed thousands of displacements. So instead of causing a ripple effect, this allows our pilots to remain qualified on all of our fleets, and it enables us to adjust capacity quickly to meet demand despite our complex fleet structure. Now, most importantly, the agreement created a structure that avoids all pilot furloughs. And moving forward, United has no plans to furlough pilots whatsoever. As you heard from Mike and Sue a little earlier, we are excited to announce that new hire classes will resume next month, and hiring will actually accelerate over the foreseeable future is our current plan. On the whole, all these factors will expedite our return to getting you here in a class at United, especially through the Aviate program. And we won't have to work through a lengthy recall process like we may have had to do with previous volatility in the industry. And guess what? United's going to need you guys really soon. The last piece of the puzzle is the network. So early in the pandemic, United acted fast to secure a long cash runway. And this was huge because we really faced some unmatched headwinds compared to our competition with the largest global network and the largest reliance on business customers. So that cash runway gave us the ability to hold on to our global assets worldwide. And now we need those assets to come back. As the pandemic continued, we maintained a good global footprint despite widespread restrictions. And while the airline was cash negative, we mounted the most robust cargo operation of any passenger airline and maximized this important revenue stream to keep us going. Finally, we are actively seizing new network opportunities that otherwise would not have even been possible without the pandemic, such as becoming #1 to India and Israel, capturing markets like Laos and Johannesburg that our competitors can no longer serve due to their fleet retirements, and making innovative changes like new point-to-point service, both domestic with our, especially this summer with our expanding CRJ 550 routes, and even some international point-to-point with Boston to London Heathrow, and our predominant return to JFK. Last but not least, we're staying ultra focused on our customers with impactful tools like the Travel Ready Center, and which helps customers determine if they can safely conduct their travel and meet all local health and safety requirements. And like Mike mentioned before as well, that agent on demand service to ease those day of travel stressors during this challenging time right now. Ultimately, our actions stand behind our goal, emerge as the greatest airline in the history of aviation. And it's clear we're going to need driven pilots like you to do that. Next, I'll turn it over to Sue so she can give you the details of Aviate.
Thank you, Mitch. I couldn't be more proud to work with this team, and I hope you hear the enthusiasm that we have for the growth that United has strategically planned for and is positioned for, and we're excited to talk to you about Aviate, which is your path to United. So let's talk about what that means to you as one of our partners in the industry, and that is when you join Aviate, you can expect a couple different things. Some of our pilots today mentioned about the different paths that they took to get to United, and many of them referenced the fact that they did not have necessarily one clear path. And so that was something that we were very focused on providing to our the flight students and instructors at UND, is that you can be confident that you'll have a clear path to United. You have the opportunity to join our ecosystem early on in your career, and we're going to talk about some of those eligibility requirements. It will be able to provide clarity at every step of the way during your professional pilot journey. I know there were many Aviate participants in the program pre-COVID, and it gave them the opportunity to be assigned a United pilot coach. So they were a mentor. So they were able to get insight into what we were doing as far as how we were strategizing and working in conjunction with our union to provide stability to our own pilot group. And also to be able to share information on what we're doing to position ourselves for success. Aviate also allows you to transition to United as a first officer upon successful completion of the Aviate program and hiring requirements. Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about some of the other benefits. So we have travel privileges that we announced in December of 2020. Aviate participants who've been in the program for 6 months are eligible to travel to hundreds of United destinations. And we do that because we're kind and caring people, but we do that because our commitment to our future aviators is that we want you to be part of our operations. We want you to understand who we are as a group, what our culture represents, and we feel that your ability to travel within our destinations allows you to see some of the operations that maybe you would not normally have the opportunity to see. As I mentioned, we also provide each Aviate participant is paired with a coach, and many of the pilots that are on this call today are some examples of our pilot coaches who create a structured format. They're able to provide information about what United, how to prepare to transition successfully to United with career development opportunities as well as networking opportunities. We also provide development events and programs to our participants to provide you a full breadth of what's happening in the industry as well as what's happening to United. So by the time you are at the point where you're able to transition to United, you have a really strong sense of who we are, what our culture is about, whether this is a place that you want to devote 30 to 40 years to. And we're doing everything we can to set you up for success in that transition. So just an overview regarding the Aviate program. When we say it's a clear path, these are some of the key steps. One is that you meet eligibility requirements. And as a student or flight instructor at UND, you are already in a position that most would love to be. And that is you are with one of only a handful of partners that of universities that United's Aviate program has selected to partner with. And so we'll talk about the specific eligibility requirements, but you're already sitting in a really important seat. You have the ability to apply to Aviate and successfully interview once meeting some minimum eligibility requirements. And then you keep building those flight hours. So at such time that you apply, and if you are successful in that interview process, you will have accomplished a couple of things. Number one, you'll have accomplished that would be the last interview you will ever have as a pilot for United Airlines. And so that becomes very important because you have the security of knowing that you've already been accepted at United Airlines. At such time, as long as you're within our ecosystem, which being an instructor, for example, at UND provides for you, you will be assigned what we call a FIFO number, first in, first out. And that number contributes significantly to the timing of when you will be able to transition to United as a first officer, and then be able to leverage many of the benefits that Michael and JD referenced as far as the importance of seniority for the rest of your career. So you just keep building those flight hours while you're in the queue to transition to United. You fly with one of our United Express partners. And when you've met the eligibility minimum requirements at that time, then as we mentioned just today, when there's a class start that is available, that is opened up and you've met your requirements, you are prepared to make that transition. Why are we doing this? Well, many of you know, as you're deciding what career to pursue, many of you have heard what the needs are going to be for pilots. There's going to be a huge demand. One, based on the retirements that JD so carefully walked you through, but also just based on growth of the industry. There are many, many more people, and there's a lot of industry information to indicate that many more people are going to be traveling over the next decades. And so based on pure growth and based on mandatory retirements, there's going to be a significant pilot shortage. And so United and Aviate, coupled with ALPA, really put our heads together a couple of years ago and said, what can we do differently than any of our competitors? And we created this program that provides individuals the opportunity to enter at several stages earlier than they would normally have in the process. So you could begin to work with us and to be part of our operations. And so traditionally, you would only be able to secure an interview through our traditional process, which is going to continue to be an option for you. But what Aviate does is it provides entry points much earlier in the process. And as you can see by this slide, you're actually with one of our core training partners, being at UND. That is at the earliest entry point that we have. So as an individual who's completed a private pilot's license or as a flight instructor, you are eligible to apply to Aviate. Also, for those who are maybe not with one of our university partners or just does not feel ready to make a commitment to Aviate and to make the decision to pursue this opportunity, there are other entry points further on in the process, and that is either flying with one of our Part 135 operators or waiting until you have joined one of our select UAX partners. I just want to mention before I move to a slide showing who those partners are, that we also recognize the need, as Mitch had mentioned, and I believe Michael had mentioned, our commitment to diversity and inclusion and making sure that we are providing opportunities for those, regardless of where anyone comes from. Historically, many of our pilots come from pilot families or generations of pilots, and we are looking forward to continuing to expand those opportunities to others because the demand and the hiring needs are going to be there. Last year, United Airlines, in that regard, partnered with EAA and established a formal partnership. So we are doing a lot of work out in the communities through volunteer work on our pilots, as well as many of our employees in the communities to help bring awareness to opportunities for employment in the aviation industry. We also, as someone mentioned earlier, we're partnering with a lot of different diversity initiatives. In fact, we've created a flight academy that there's going to be some announcements in their near future to help provide opportunities with scholarships and other opportunities for individuals who might not already have a path to becoming a pilot to do so. So let's look at who those partners are. As I mentioned, you're already in a very exclusive pool of individuals as a flight student at UND. And so we're excited to already be talking with individuals. We've been on campus virtually for about a year. We launched our partnership with UND in early 2020. And unfortunately, because of COVID, we had to halt our interviews, but we have resumed those interviews. And I have personally been looking at applications and excited to see some of the UND students that we've been talking to in the last year, really stepping forward and putting in an application and hopefully interviewing in the next month or two, and starting to see some proof that this is a reality for each of you, and that it could be you on any given day. So we're working with our handful of universities as well as professional flight schools. We also have our two partners, Part 135 operators, Ameriflight and Boutique Air, and then our current UAX regional partners. This ecosystem is going to continue to grow so that we can ensure that anybody who joins the process, especially early on at the university or flight school level, has a path to getting to United. So what does that mean for you? I mentioned that you're in a great spot. And so you just need to meet minimum eligibility requirements. And let me walk you through those. It requires that you be a full-time student at UND pursuing a United aviation major that will result in an ATP or restricted ATP. And at UND, that's a Bachelor of Science in Commercial Aviation. It also requires that you have a minimum of a 3.0 cumulative GPA at the time of your application, that you've completed at least 2 semesters of coursework at the participating university. So for those of you that are sitting right now in the freshman class, you're thinking about, you're probably getting close to having completed 2 semesters. Hopefully you've been very focused right now on your academics, as difficult as the year has been with less flying. Hopefully you've been able to focus on your academics, because that minimum 3.0 cumulative GPA is going to be important when you're ready to apply. It requires that you hold a minimum of a private pilot certificate and that you hold an FAA medical certificate that was originally issued as a first or second class medical. So many of you are sitting there going, wow, either I'm already there because I'm in the senior class, or I'm already getting there because I'm almost completed with my first year. So the opportunities are right within reach. So let's say you've met those minimum eligibility requirements. And so I'm just going to walk you very briefly through some steps on what's next. So once you meet those eligibility requirements, it's a personal decision as to when you're going to apply and when you feel ready. But when you are ready to do so, we are ready for you. You just apply simply by visiting our website, unitedaviate.com. There's a tremendous amount of information on there for you, and that's where you begin your application process. There are 2 sections. You complete both an airline apps, and upon completing the airline apps, you get a second email asking you to complete a United profile. Once both of those are completed, our pilot hiring team is reviewing applications on an ongoing basis, consistently looking for candidates. And once you've passed that initial application review, if selected, you would then receive an email to complete some online assessments, including a leadership inventory. Some of these assessments in the past are assessments we've done on site. And because of COVID, we talk about some of the efficiencies we've learned over the last year. We've learned that those are just as easily completed at home prior to scheduling your interview. So we've made that change. Once those assessments are completed and reviewed, for those that are selected, you'll receive an invite to interview at our world-class United Flight Training Center that Michael mentioned in Denver. You'll get to experience it yourself. You'll have the opportunity to select a preferred interview date and request travel. And so we have a team that's ready to help plan your travel to Denver. We also want you to be successful. So we will be sending out an entire package of interview prep materials to you to help you understand how to prepare. And we provide you with an opportunity to participate in some optional interview prep training as well, which we're going to go into a little bit later. We're going to talk about the interview itself in a little bit more detail, but then step 4 is the interview, a panel interview and a technical interview. And then as pilot interviewers and as talent acquisition interviewers, we're given the responsibility as well as the privilege to make our recommendations to the Board of Review, who makes the final decision on whether an applicant is accepted into the program. Again, at that time, as a reminder, that is when you have if successful, that is when you have completed your last interview with United Airlines. And you can brag to your family that you are in line to join one of what is the greatest airline in the history of aviation. Let's talk a little bit about preparing for an Aviate interview, and I'd like to turn it over to one of our pilot interviews. Would you like to get started with that?
I would. Thanks, Sue.
Thanks.
I appreciate it. So basically, I have the fortunate, I've been chosen actually about 2 years ago to participate as one of the pilots on the interview panel, which has really been a really rewarding experience. So when you apply and are selected, you're actually going to sit next to me and Sue, or I should say across the table from us. So just briefly talking about the actual interview. Can you go to the next slide, Sue,
yes,
please? Thanks. This is really about you. And by the time that you get on the airplane to travel out to Denver, it really is for you to show us who you are. All of the hard work that you've done at North Dakota and outside of North Dakota, and then into the regional, which will be your next step after being a CFI. This is really your day to shine. And so we like to say, and it's in our manual, matter of fact, like your flight operations manual, it is in ours that United strives to hire captains. So when you get on that airplane to fly out to Denver for the Aviate interview, you can kind of think of yourself as being looked at as a potential United Airlines captain. You need to fly me around to my retirement spot on the Hawaiian Islands someday. So I need a really good captain. We try to keep it as comfortable as possible. So we know that interviewing is stressful. I mean, everybody gets stressed. It's just a natural way of life. Mistakes are natural. Just like you do in your training at North Dakota, or if you're an instructor and you're teaching your students and we make minor mistakes all the time, what do? We just keep flying the airplane. The interview is the same way. We want you to kind of work your way through any type of little bobble that you have and show that you're human, but pull out of the little bit of the mistake that might occur there. There's basically, when you arrive in Denver, the footprint's about 3 hours. So we have a 45-minute interview with a pilot like myself and a talent acquisition representative like Sue. And we ask a series of questions based upon your experience level. So we're going to ask a lot of questions that probably are going to mainly pertain directly to your experience at North Dakota. So we're going to ask about stage checks. We're going to ask about the different types of ratings that you've received, the classwork, and you're going to give us responses based upon your experience, what you learned from it, and basically how you would carry yourself into the future if presented with a similar situation. The second part of the interview is teamed up with one of our captains, and it's a technical assessment, but don't worry about it. It's no different than preparing for a stage check at UND. And what you'll do is you'll sit down with this captain and kind of work through some questions based off of your background and experience. So if you're starting as a private pilot, we're not going to be asking you to give us examples of how to shoot a RNAV approach into runway 35 left. We're not going to ask you to do that. But we will ask you to talk about pre-flighting. We'll ask you to talk about the different airspace. We'll maybe even ask you to give us a couple responses to the operation of the Piper that you're currently flying. But again, we're trying to make it comfortable. So it's tailored basically where you are in your assessment. Whereas if we were to do this with somebody off the street who didn't participate in Aviate, maybe was a military officer, or maybe they came from one of our competitors, our expectation of them would be a Part 121 captain. We're going to ask them about a little bit more technical over water flying, et cetera. Next slide, please. So basically, a lot of this we've kind of gone over, and a lot of this is fairly common. So I'm going to speed up through this so as we can get to questions, because I know the class is almost over here. But here are the main 6 areas that we're looking for you to be successful in the interview. Maintain your technical proficiency, work hard, always fly as much as you can, because that's the key, is building hours as quick as possible so that you can get to United. Take pride in yourself, be professional, be accountable, know how the camera is always on, and that goes from the minute that you start engaging with United to the time that you really start your first day in class, is that people are watching you. We want you to represent us positively. Prepare and practice. Come in, be prepared. You're going to be nervous, so make sure that you have the answers kind of ready to go. Self-improvement. Everybody, it doesn't matter if you're a 777 captain 2 days from retirement or you're a freshman at UND, there's always room to improve yourself. And then foster relationships. This is an incredibly small business that exists. And there's no way I could have thought that I would be doing this 20 years ago when I was sitting at North Dakota to now be here today. But it's through relationships and partnerships and opportunities. So there's other opportunities. You heard Mike mention that he's an instructor at United. And then we have an ALPA volunteer on here, and we have pilot interviewers. So we need people that want to go and learn and be able to grow the next bench, basically. Next slide, please. Thanks. And we had kind of mentioned it. And by the way, that's my favorite picture. So whoever put that in there, that's great. That's the California 757. I've personally flown it. It is a cool looking bird out there. And we kind of hit on the first in, first out. This is the golden ticket. And we've talked about the seniority number. We've talked about how important it is to get on a list ahead of time. And I'm just going to make it very simple here, and you can read the rest of this. Let's pretend that you're that sophomore interviewing today at United Airlines in Denver on April 1st, 2021. Your April 1st, 2021 number will go with you all the way to your first day in class. Now, there's a new seniority number that starts on our pilot seniority list, but as far as when you are looked at to being able to go over to United, that would be retro back to the April 1st, 2021 date. So that means that if you chose to go to Air Wisconsin after finishing up your CFI and teaching other students at UND, that Air Wisconsin new hire who was not a North Dakota student would be behind you, if that makes sense. And we can answer more on that in the Q&A. Thank you, Sue.
Thanks, Bill, so much. So we are going to try to get to the Q&A. I see that we're wrapping it up. So as far as what's next for future applicants, as I mentioned, you go on unitedaviate.com. And for current applicants, know that we are processing those applications. Continue to check your emails regularly, update your airline apps, review your United profile on a regular basis, and trust that we our interviewing process has resumed, and we're getting to everyone as early as we can. So I'd like to just thank you all for allowing us to open these doors. Every door that is open that you step through is an opportunity for you. And we hope that you learned something today that's going to help inform your choices and your path. So we're going to open this up to some questions now, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Well, thank you, United team, for that great presentation and for that extremely exciting news. I believe you're the first large carrier to announce that you are starting pilot training again. So again, on behalf of United, that's exciting, but on behalf of the whole industry, it is extremely exciting. So congratulations. It does appear that there are a couple of questions that have come in, and students, you know where the Q&A is on the bottom of your screen. So if you have questions you want to chat in, we do have about 12 minutes for these questions. So the first question that came in, how far behind hiring at United Airlines is hiring at the UAX carriers generally start? So it's exciting that you've announced hiring, but we don't necessarily see that your regional partners have started hiring again. Can anyone speak to that?
I can speak to that. We've at ALPA, we have meetings with our partner MECs at our regional partners. And I can tell you that they, in our meeting last month, they are current at Mesa, for instance, they have recalled all of their furloughed pilots and are preparing to start interviewing. In Wisconsin, I believe the interview window is open, and Commuter has been interviewing for the past 3 months, and they're filling class dates in the summer. So for those 3 partners, they are actually interviewing currently or preparing to.
Good. Do you anticipate adding any additional regional partners to that list?
I can talk to that. So our pilot strategy team is always looking at that ecosystem. As I mentioned, it's important that when individuals enter the Aviate system, that they stay within our Aviate system. And so we're continuously looking to make sure that there are opportunities for flying along that entire transition to United Airlines. So just like we made this important announcement today, I anticipate that we'll continue to have encouraging updates, and I encourage all of you to subscribe to our United Aviate website, because that's the best way to get information about new partners that are being added.
Okay. We do have a couple questions from our international students. Are there any opportunities for international students at United? And can they apply for the Aviate program specifically?
You have to be eligible to work in the United States. And so that's one of the primary requirements at this stage, not only for Aviate, but for United in general.
Good. And another question, I know, so we've had some of these conversations. Do you have to stay at UND as a CFI until you transition to one of the partners to maintain qualification under the Aviate program?
That is our preferred method, because when we have individuals who are instructing at UND, we've made an agreement with this partnership. It's intended to be win-win, not only for our partners, but also for United. And so we've made a commitment to, for example, to UND, that the flight instructors will stay a certain amount of time and a certain number of hours. And so that's really an agreement between Aviate and UND. And so yes, that is the expectation and the preference. We do have other locations as far as working with our professional flight schools, but the preference ideally, in order for you to hit those transition requirements, those minimum transition requirements as early as you can, is to stay where you are.
And I have a feeling that question probably came from Mr. Lovelace's CFI class. And as you know, when the industry slows down hiring, so does our hiring of flight instructors. So the news that the hiring is picking up only means that our current instructors are going to be taking that next step in their career, thus opening up the pathway for us to begin hiring again more of our recent graduates or current students. So hang in there, guys. It is turning around, and we are going to need you as CFIs at the University of North Dakota as well. So everything kind of relies on each other in this industry and continues to grow with the opportunities. So again, encouraged. We have a couple minutes if there's any other questions out there. We do have a couple very specific kind of questions coming in. Ms. McGrath, can you please share maybe the Aviate email address or something if students have kind of very specific questions that you could address that way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say first and foremost, I would direct everyone to our website. We're continuing to update that, and that's got the most comprehensive information. If you still have questions after going through that, after reviewing the website, I could direct you to aviate@united.com. Because we've had so many exciting announcements in the last couple of months between our Aviate travel program, we announced a family and dependent program, and we've announced some other, we've had several other new announcements. Right now, that inbox is just a little bit delayed in getting a response. So that's why I'd suggest checking out that website first. We've done our best to try to make sure we provide all of that information.
Good. So there's a couple more questions that came in. So individual is wondering if they're currently a veteran with no military flying background, is it more advantageous to fly for one of your regionals and then apply to United, or go to the Air Force Reserve? What would you look at more favorably, I guess, as a hiring committee? Are they both good options?
I was just going to say that would be more on our traditional path. We obviously were very committed to the military, and we're very grateful for the service they provide to our country. And so we do have a component of the Aviate program. If they choose to apply through the Aviate program, there's some contingencies in place for being able to count some of that service time. They can count 50% of their service time once they are an Aviate participant. As far as how that relates to them if they choose to apply through the traditional path, which is going to continue to remain an option as well. The answer is a little bit less clear, as far as I'm not exactly sure which would be the preferred mode at this point, Beth.
Oh. Another great question. Are there any traits or involvements, experiences that an applicant can pursue to set themselves apart in the application process? And then I might add to that too, what role does networking play for students as they embark on this career?
Bill, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. So we're looking for, when we look at an application, I'll tell you what we do as far as the team goes, is we sit down a few minutes before you come into the room. And we look at your experience and background based upon what you have on the application. So we kind of have a little bit of an idea ahead of time in terms of what you've done personally to get yourself somewhere. But what can you do to kind of set yourself out to stand out? I think it kind of goes back to the networking. Get involved with the different organizations. So let's talk about, first of all, Aviate is a great one to get involved with and network with, because you're going to be directly lined up with a ambassador and coach directly one-on-one that you're going to have through your entire journey on the Aviate path. I can speak to all of us on the call here that are pilots. We didn't have that opportunity. So that really is going to mature as it goes on for you. The outside partnerships, Women in Aviation, OBAP, ALPA, ACE Club, these are all really great examples of someone that can set you apart. We're always looking for somebody who, goes the extra mile to assist others, because aside from flying airplanes, we need people to be good ambassadors to our customers so they actually want to come back and fly us again. So anything that you can do, we can hire somebody and have them fly all over the world and eat, crew meals and see our different destinations. But we need people who have worked in training departments. We need people who have expertise to come and join our ranks, because we're going to need to expand that as we go forward.
Great. And speaking of networking, I believe you guys are going to be involved next week in the 2 weeks, the SAMA conference coming up. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We look forward to it.
And so that might be an opportunity to have more smaller conversations with our team. So I guess one last question we have, and we have a lot of United family within our student ranks. So that's great to see. And I know we just had a prospective student event on Saturday, and again had a lot of United pilots, family members bringing their children through. So the question is about the family dependent option. Is it a different path, or is it the same as our UND Aviate path? Can you speak to that?
Excellent question, because we just announced the family program, so there's still a lot of questions out there. For those of you who are already lucky enough to be at UND, you already are eligible based on the eligibility requirements that we shared. And so you've got that extra bonus of being a dependent, but you do not need to, they are the same path. So they both end up in the same career development program with the same type of coaching, and everything else is the same. So yeah, you can apply either way, as a student or as a dependent.
Well, great. Well, again, we want to thank you so much for taking the time to Zoom in with us this afternoon, and for coming back in 2 weeks as part of the SAMA conference. I know we continue to have some questions coming in, but I encourage our students to take advantage of SAMA in 2 weeks and reach out to not only United, who will be present, but other industry partners as well. Again, it's amazing to see that after these last 12 months, the pickup in the airlines and the hiring and the travel again. So yeah. Again, it's a great time to be in the industry, and thank you so much for being with us today.
You're very welcome. If I could just close out with a quote that I just heard this week, and I think it's important for us all to just think about what can we be doing. And the last question was, how can I set myself apart? With the partnership that we have, we've defined what the eligibility requirements are. You're not meeting any kind of algorithm. If you meet those eligibility requirements and you've done the work to get to UND and to meet those eligibility requirements, you're going to be getting in for an interview if you've passed that application screening process. What's really important is that we want to know about you. Just like today, this was all about informing you. We want to know about you. So my last quote is, the harder I work, the luckier I get. So you worked really hard to be selected as one of the premier students at UND. Continue to work hard, and we look forward to the opportunity to talk with you at SAMA or sometime in the future. Thank you.
We look forward to having you back on campus, hopefully in the fall semester. So,
absolutely.
And thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.